It's late evening. You're sitting on the couch finally still, after a long day, when your dog walks over, sits down right beside you and starts licking your hand. Slow, steady, rhythmic, their tongue moving in the same path again and again. You glance down. They're already looking up at you, eyes locked on your face like they're waiting for something, or saying something. You've seen this 100 times. You've always assumed you knew what it meant. You don't. Not entirely. Because that one gesture, the most ordinary thing your dog does, carries at least 7 completely different messages depending on when it happens, how it happens, and what your dog's body is doing while it's happening. And some of those messages are not what you think. Before we get into this, drop your dog's name in the comments. And tell me, when does your dog lick you most? First thing in the morning when you get home, or late at night when everything's quiet? Most people land on the same answer: affection. Their dog licks them because they love them. And honestly, that's not wrong. But here's the problem with stopping there. Researchers who have spent decades studying this specific behavior have found something that changes the whole picture. Licking isn't one message, it's a vocabulary. The same tongue, the same motion, the same dog, and depending on the context, it can mean something completely different each time. Affection, anxiety, a chemical scan of your skin, a peace offering after tension, or in some cases, something that has nothing to do with you at all, and everything to do with what's happening inside their body. The difference between those messages isn't subtle. It's written in the rhythm, the timing, the direction of their eyes, and what was happening in the room 60 seconds before they walked over. Once you know what to look for, you'll never read that lick the same way again. So what is your dog actually trying to tell you right now? Before your dog has been near you for 30 seconds, they already know things about you that you haven't said out loud to anyone. Here's how. Tucked into the roof of your dog's mouth, just behind the front teeth, is a structure called the vomeronasal organ, also known as Jacobson's organ, first described in detail by the anatomist Ludwig Jacobson in 1813. It looks like 2 small fluid-filled pouches, and it does something your nose cannot. While your nose detects airborne scent molecules, Jacobson's organ reads chemical compounds in liquid form, the kind that transfer directly from skin to tongue. When your dog licks you, they aren't just tasting you, they're loading those compounds directly into this organ. And what gets processed there bypasses the thinking brain almost entirely. It routes straight into the limbic system, the part of the brain that handles emotion, memory, and survival response. Your dog isn't analyzing you consciously. They're receiving a biological report. That report contains more than you'd expect. Researchers studying canine olfactory processing have found that dogs can detect hormonal shifts associated with cortisol, your body's primary stress marker, through skin contact alone. Fear, anxiety, physical illness, hormonal changes. Your dog isn't reading your face to figure out how you're doing. They're reading your chemistry. The lick is the data collection. The way they respond after it is the conclusion. Think about what that means for the most ordinary moment in your day. You come home, you sit down, your dog walks over and licks your wrist once. You think they're saying hello. They're running a full diagnostic. Your dog doesn't need you to tell them how you're doing. They already know before you do. Now here's the one that matters most, and the one most owners miss entirely. There is a version of licking that looks on the surface exactly like affection. Same motion, same dog. But veterinary behaviorists who study compulsive behavior in dogs have identified a pattern that is clinically distinct from everything else, and once you know what it looks like, you cannot unsee it. It's called compulsive licking, and it is not about you. The 3 markers that separate it from normal licking are specific. First, the intensity increases suddenly. A dog that rarely licked before is now doing it constantly with an urgency that feels different from their usual behavior. Second, they start licking surfaces. The floor, the couch, the air itself, not just your skin. Third, and this is the detail that veterinarians flag most often, the licking is paired with repeated swallowing. A gulping motion between licks over and over, like they're trying to clear something they can't clear. These are not quirks. Veterinary internal medicine specialists have identified compulsive licking as a clinical marker for gastrointestinal distress, nausea, acid, reflux, pancreatic inflammation. It also appears in dogs experiencing chronic internal pain from conditions like arthritis or dental disease that haven't yet produced visible symptoms. In older dogs, sudden onset licking paired with disorientation can be an early indicator of focal seizures or canine cognitive dysfunction. What makes this so easy to miss is that we're wired to interpret licking as positive, sweet even. So when a dog starts doing it more, the instinct is to feel more loved, not more concerned. Your dog doesn't have a way to say something is wrong inside my body. They can't point to where it hurts. They can't describe what the sensation feels like. Licking is the only signal they have. If the pattern changes, pay attention. That change is the message. I want to ask you something before we go further. Has your dog ever started licking suddenly and you couldn't figure out why? The floor, the air, anything they could reach? Drop it in the comments. So far, we've talked about what licking does for your dog, the information it gives them, the signal it sends when something is wrong. But there's a third thing happening when your dog licks you, something that happens to both of you at the same time, and the science behind it is stranger and more moving than most people expect. In 2015, a research team led by Miho Nagasawa at Azabu University in Japan published a study in Science, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. They measured oxytocin levels in 30 dog-owner pairs during interaction. Oxytocin, if you haven't heard the name, is the bonding hormone, the same neurochemical that floods a mother's brain the moment she holds her newborn for the first time. It's the molecule that tells your nervous system, this is someone safe. This is someone I belong with. What they found was extraordinary. When dogs and their owners interacted through touch, through gaze, through physical contact, including licking, oxytocin rose in both of them simultaneously. Not just in the owner, not just in the dog, in both. At the same time, across two completely different species, oxytocin levels in owners rose by up to 300%, and the higher the owner's oxytocin climbed, the more the dog wanted to engage, which released more oxytocin in the dog, which made the owner feel more bonded, which made them respond more warmly. A self-reinforcing loop, a cycle of connection that keeps building on itself. Then the researchers tested the same protocol with wolves raised by humans from birth, animals that had lived alongside people their entire lives. The loop didn't activate, not even close. This biochemical exchange didn't just happen by accident. It co-evolved specifically between dogs and humans over 15,000 years of living side by side. No other animal on Earth triggers it. Every time your dog licks you and you respond, you're not just having a moment together. You're running a piece of biology that took 15,000 years to build. Here's where it gets complicated. Because everything we've covered so far assumes that when your dog licks you, the emotional context is neutral or positive. But there's a version of this behavior that carries a completely different meaning, and it tends to happen at exactly the moment most owners misread it the most. In 2017, researchers Angelika Fernquez and Angela Bartels at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich ran a study with 116 dogs. They were specifically looking at how dogs use physical signals to manage tension during interactions with humans. And what they found about licking was not what most people would expect. Licking appeared significantly more often in situations involving conflict or stress, not during calm, relaxed moments, during the moments right after raised voices, right after a correction, right after the energy in the room shifted into something uncomfortable. The researchers identified it as an appeasement signal, a deliberate communicative gesture designed to reduce tension and send one very specific message: I am not a threat. Please don't escalate this. In wolf and dog, social behavior appeasement signals are sophisticated. They're not random, they're deployed with precision directed at whoever holds the social tension in that moment. When your dog licks you after you've raised your voice, slammed a door, or come home carrying stress that hasn't left your body yet, they are not expressing affection. They are extending an olive branch. They are doing the only thing they know how to do to bring the temperature back down. The lick feels the same. The motion is identical. But the message is the opposite of what most people assume they're receiving. Next time your dog licks you right after a tense moment, they're not kissing you. They're waving a white flag, and they're hoping you'll wave one back. There's one more context where licking appears, and it's the one that's hardest to explain away as instinct or conditioning or chemical signaling. Because what it suggests about your dog's inner life is something that scientists spent decades insisting wasn't possible. In 2018, researchers at Goldsmiths College, University of London, studied how dogs respond to human emotional distress. They brought dogs into a room where both their owner and a stranger were present. At different points, each person either hummed quietly to themselves or cried. What the dogs did next became one of the most cited findings in canine empathy research. The dogs approached the crying person significantly more often than the humming person. And critically, they approached the stranger who was crying just as readily as their own owner. It wasn't about familiarity. It wasn't about recognizing a specific person's distress signal. The dogs were responding to the emotional state itself. Researchers described this as empathic concern, a genuine orientation toward alleviating another individual's distress, not simply reacting to a sound. And when they approached, they made physical contact. They leaned in, they licked, not frantically, not in the compulsive pattern we talked about earlier, slowly, gently, directed at the face and hands. Very few animals do this. Most species respond to distress signals from their own kind, with either mirroring or avoidance. Responding to a stranger's emotional pain with deliberate physical comfort, that's a different category of behavior entirely. Your dog doesn't come to you when you're crying because the sound is unusual. They come because something in their nervous system registers that you are not okay. And licking in that moment is not a reflex. It's a choice. Your dog doesn't need to understand grief to respond to it. They just need to know that you're hurting. Everything we've covered so far describes licking as something dogs do, instinctively driven by biology, evolution, or emotional response. But there's another layer underneath all of that. One that your dog built deliberately through observation over months of living with you specifically. In 2008, Megan Heron and colleagues published research in the journal Applied Animal Behavior Science, examining how dogs learn to use specific behaviors to generate responses from the people around them. What they found was straightforward but easy to underestimate. Dogs are exceptionally good at identifying which behaviors produce reliable outcomes. And licking, it turns out, produces a response from humans almost every single time. You pet them, you talk to them, you laugh, you push them away, which still counts because the interaction happened. Your dog doesn't distinguish between a warm response and a mildly annoyed one. What they register is, I did the thing and the human reacted. That's a successful communication. That's worth repeating. Alexandra Horowitz at the Horowitz Dog Cognition Lab at Barnard College, Columbia University, has traced the evolutionary root of this behavior further back. In the wild, wolf pups lick around the mouth of returning adults to trigger a regurgitation reflex. It's how they get fed. As dogs were domesticated, that muzzle-directed licking gradually shifted. Your hands and face became the substitute muzzle. The behavior stayed. The target changed. What this means is that every single time you've responded to your dog's lick in any way, with any reaction, you've been part of a conversation you didn't know you were having. You've been teaching your dog which signals work with you specifically. Not with dogs in general, with you. Every lick your dog has ever given you has been in some small way a sentence they learned to say because you taught them it worked. Here's the last message, and it's the most quietly surprising one. Because this version of licking isn't about you at all, you just happen to be there. Researchers studying canine stress responses have found that the physical act of licking triggers a measurable neurochemical response inside the dog's own brain. The repetitive motion releases endorphins, the brain's natural pain-dampening compounds, and stimulates dopamine pathways associated with calm and reward. Not because of who they're licking, because of the act itself, the rhythm, the repetition, the physical sensation of tongue against surface. You've probably seen this version without recognizing it. It tends to look different from the others in one specific way. The dog isn't really looking at you. Their eyes are slightly unfocused, directed somewhere past your face or down toward your hand. The rhythm is unusually, even almost mechanical, and if you shift position or pull your hand away, they follow the hand without really registering that you moved. They're not connecting with you, they're regulating themselves. This happens most often during situations that produce low-grade ongoing stress. A thunderstorm in the distance, a house full of unfamiliar people, a change in routine that hasn't settled yet. The dog can't remove the source of the discomfort, so they do the thing that their nervous system has learned will take the edge off. It's the canine equivalent of a person who taps their foot when they're anxious, or rubs their thumb across their fingers when they're trying to stay calm. The behavior isn't directed outward, it's directed inward. Sometimes your dog licks you not because they need something from you, but because the act of licking you is the thing that gets them through the moment. So go back to that couch, but now you have something you didn't have before. A framework, a way to actually read what's being said. Is the rhythm mechanical, their eyes slightly unfocused? They're not talking to you. They're calming themselves down and you happen to be the surface that helps them do it. Is it happening right after tension in the room? A raised voice, a stressful phone call, a shift in the atmosphere. That's not affection, that's a white flag. They felt the change and they're trying to bring things back to safe. Is it slow, deliberate, paired with eye contact that keeps coming back to your face. That's the chemistry loop running. Oxytocin moving through both of you at the same time, the way it has between dogs and humans for 15,000 years. And if the pattern is new, sudden, urgent, directed at the floor, or the air paired with that quiet, gulping motion, stop interpreting it. That's not a message about their feelings for you. That's your dog telling you something is wrong inside their body, and licking is the only word they have for it. This is what makes dogs different from every other animal we've brought into our lives. Not just that they communicate with us, but that they've built an entire vocabulary out of a single gesture and spent years learning exactly which version of it works on you specifically. Your dog doesn't have language. They have this, and they've been using it precisely and deliberately every single time. If this changed how you'll read that next lick, subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me your dog's name and which one of these you think they've been sending you all along. And if you want to know what your dog is actually hearing every time you talk to them, that's the next video. The science behind it is going to surprise you.